I was 23 years old when I answered the job posting for a winter caretaker at Hollow Creek Research Station in the mountains of northern Montana. The advertisement promised solitude, decent pay, and the chance to escape the chaos of my recent college graduation. What it did not mention were the rules that would keep me alive. The helicopter ride took 4 hours, weaving through mountain passes and over endless forests of Douglas fir and lodgepole pine. My pilot, a weathered woman named Sarah Chen, spoke little during the flight, her focus fixed on navigating the treacherous peaks that jutted up like broken teeth around us. As we crested the final ridge, Hollow Creek Station appeared below, a collection of gray buildings clustered in a narrow valley beside a frozen creek. The structures looked military in design, angular and utilitarian, with metal roofs that reflected the weak winter sun. We touched down on a concrete helipad, the rotors kicking up clouds of powdery snow. I grabbed my 2 duffel bags and climbed out, my breath forming white clouds in the frigid air. The temperature had to be well below 0, and the wind cut through my jacket like it was made of paper. A man emerged from the largest building, moving quickly despite the snow. He was perhaps 50, with a thick beard streaked with gray and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore a heavy parka with a patch that read Station Director on the chest. Marcus Webb? He called over the dying whine of the helicopter. "Yes, sir," I shouted back. "That is me." He nodded and gestured toward the building. "I am Owen Garrett. Get inside before you freeze." I followed him across the compound, my boots crunching in the deep snow. The station consisted of 5 main structures arranged in a rough circle around a central courtyard. Everything was connected by covered walkways, presumably so you could move between buildings without braving the elements. Owen led me into what appeared to be the main operations center, a large room filled with computers, radio equipment, and weather monitoring stations. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, crackling with a healthy fire that did little to warm the cavernous space. 2 other people were in the room. A woman in her early 30s sat at one of the computer stations, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She glanced up as we entered, offering a brief nod before returning to her work. At the far end of the room, an older man with wire-rimmed glasses was adjusting dials on what looked like seismograph equipment. "This is Dr. Patricia Monroe," Owen said, gesturing to the woman. "She runs our atmospheric research program. And that is Professor Leonard Hayes. He studies seismic activity in the region." "Welcome to the end of the Earth," Patricia said without looking up from her screen. "It is not that bad," Leonard called from his station, though his tone suggested otherwise. Owen guided me to a smaller office off the main room. He closed the door behind us and sat heavily in a worn leather chair, gesturing for me to take the seat across from him. From a desk drawer, he pulled out a manila folder and set it between us. "Your duties are straightforward," he began. "You will maintain the generators, keep the walkways clear of snow, monitor weather instruments, and assist the researchers as needed. Everyone here pulls their weight. There are no passengers at Hollow Creek." I nodded, eager to prove myself. This job represented a fresh start, a chance to figure out my life away from the expectations and disappointments that had followed me through college. "However," Owen continued, his expression growing serious, "there are specific rules you must follow. Not guidelines or suggestions. Mandatory rules." He opened the folder and removed a single sheet of paper, sliding it across the desk to me. I picked it up, expecting standard safety procedures. Instead, I found a handwritten list titled simply, "Station Rules." Rule 1. Never leave any building between sunset and sunrise. If you hear someone calling your name after dark, do not respond and do not open any doors. Rule 2. If you see lights moving in the forest at night, close all curtains immediately and do not watch them. Rule 3. The eastern sector is off limits at all times. Do not enter for any reason. Rule 4. If you hear music or singing with no apparent source, leave the area calmly. Do not run. Rule 5. Always work in pairs when outside during daylight. Never go anywhere alone. Rule 6. If you find equipment or supplies moved from where you left them, report it immediately. Do not move them back. Rule 7. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I read through the list twice, waiting for Owen to crack a smile or tell me this was some kind of hazing ritual for new employees. His expression remained grave. "I do not understand," I said carefully. "What are these rules protecting us from?" "From making fatal mistakes," Owen replied. Hollow Creek Station was built on land that the Blackfeet people considered sacred and dangerous. They had their own rules about this valley, passed down for generations. We ignored those warnings when we constructed this facility 20 years ago. He paused, his jaw tightening. We learned the hard way that some rules exist for good reasons. What happened 20 years ago? "We lost people," he said flatly. "Good people who did not follow the rules. Now we follow them religiously, and we have not had an incident in over a decade." I wanted to ask more questions, but something in Owen's tone told me the conversation was over. He stood, taking the rule sheet from my hands and tucking it back into the folder. "Your quarters are in Building 3, the residential unit. Dr. Monroe will show you to your room and give you a tour of the facility. Dinner is at 1800 hours in the mess hall. Everyone eats together. It is one of our few social occasions." He walked me back into the main room, where Patricia was shutting down her computer terminal. She grabbed a thick parka from a hook by the door and pulled it on. "Ready for the grand tour?" she asked, her tone suggesting there was nothing grand about it. We stepped out into the covered walkway, and Patricia led me through the compound. She pointed out the various buildings, the generator station that kept our power running, the supply depot where food and equipment were stored, the mess hall that doubled as a recreation area, and finally Building 3, the residential quarters. The interior was Spartan but functional. A long hallway with doors on either side, each leading to a small private room. Patricia stopped at room 7 and opened the door. Inside was a single bed, a desk, a small dresser, and a window that looked out toward the forest. A space heater hummed in the corner, fighting against the cold that seeped through the walls. "It is not the Hilton," Patricia said, "but it is warm and dry. Bathroom is at the end of the hall. We share it, so do not take forever in the shower." I set my bags on the bed. "How long have you been here?" 3 years, she said, leaning against the doorframe. "Started as a summer research assistant and never left. The work is fascinating and you learn to appreciate the isolation." "What about the rules?" I asked, pulling the crumpled list from my pocket. Owen had given me a copy after all. "Do things really happen here that require these?" Patricia's expression shifted, becoming guarded. "Every single one of those rules is written in someone's blood, Marcus. Sometimes literally. My advice, do not question them. Do not test them. Just follow them exactly as written." "But what is out there?" She was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "There are places in this world that do not belong to us. Places where old things still hold power. This valley is one of them. The station was built here because of unusual electromagnetic readings and seismic patterns that made it ideal for our research. But there are reasons the indigenous people avoided this area for centuries." "That sounds like superstition." "I thought so too at first," Patricia said. "Then I spent a winter here. You will understand soon enough." She pushed off from the doorframe. "Unpack and get settled. I will come get you for dinner in an hour." After she left, I unpacked my belongings, trying to shake off the unease that had settled over me. The rules seemed absurd, the kind of urban legends that circulated online. Yet Owen's serious demeanor and Patricia's warning suggested something more substantial lay beneath the surface. I walked to the window and looked out at the forest. The sun was already sinking behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the snow. The trees stood like silent sentinels, dark and imposing against the white landscape. As I watched, I thought I saw movement between the trunks, something large shifting in the shadows. I blinked and it was gone. Probably just a deer or elk. This was wilderness after all. Animals were to be expected. A knock at my door pulled me from my thoughts. Patricia stood in the hallway, now wearing jeans and a thick sweater instead of her work clothes. "Dinner time," she said. "Hope you like stew. That is what we eat about 4 nights a week." The mess hall was a long rectangular building with tables arranged in rows and a kitchen at one end. The smell of cooking meat and vegetables filled the air, making my stomach growl. I had not realized how hungry I was. Owen sat at one of the tables with Leonard and 2 other people I had not met yet. A young woman with short blonde hair and a tattoo sleeve on her left arm, and a muscular man in his 40s with a shaved head and a scar running down his cheek. "Marcus, this is Emma Reeves," Owen said, gesturing to the young woman. "She handles our IT infrastructure and communications. And this is Jack Sullivan, our head of security and logistics." "Security?" I asked, sliding into a seat. "What do you need security for out here?" Jack's expression was unreadable. Wildlife, equipment theft, unauthorized visitors. You would be surprised how many problems can crop up even in the middle of nowhere. Emma ladled stew into bowls and passed them around. Plus, someone needs to make sure idiots do not wander into places they should not go. Like the eastern sector? I asked. The table went silent. Everyone stopped eating and looked at me. Owen gave you the rules already? Leonard asked, breaking the uncomfortable quiet. First thing, I confirmed, though nobody has explained what is actually in the eastern sector. And nobody will, Owen said firmly. That area is off limits. End of discussion. We ate in strained silence for several minutes. Finally, Emma spoke up, clearly trying to change the subject. So Marcus, what made you want to spend a winter in the mountains? Most people our age are chasing jobs in cities, not running away to research stations. I shrugged. Needed a change. Needed to figure some things out away from distractions. Well, you certainly came to the right place for that, she said with a slight smile. We get supply drops every 2 weeks when weather permits. Otherwise, we are completely cut off. No visitors, no tourists, just us and the work. And whatever else is out there, Jack muttered into his stew. Patricia shot him a warning look, but he ignored it. Look, the kid should know what he is getting into, Jack said, setting down his spoon. Marcus, this place is not normal. The sooner you accept that, the safer you will be. Follow the rules exactly. Do not try to be a hero or prove anything. And if something feels wrong, it probably is. That is Rule 7, I said. That is the most important one, Jack replied. Your gut has instincts older than language. Listen to them. After dinner, I returned to my room feeling unsettled. Everyone at the station seemed genuinely afraid of something, yet nobody would say exactly what. The rules hinted at dangers but offered no explanations. I was expected to follow instructions blindly, trusting that my co-workers knew better than me. I lay in bed, listening to the wind howl outside my window. The building creaked and groaned, settling into the cold night. I had nearly drifted off to sleep when I heard it. Marcus, my name spoken clearly, coming from just outside my window. I sat up, my heart suddenly pounding. The voice had sounded like Patricia, but muffled as if she were calling through the glass. Marcus, I need help. Please open the window. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my hand reaching automatically toward the window latch. Then I stopped. Rule 1 flashing in my mind. Never leave any building between sunset and sunrise. If you hear someone calling your name after dark, do not respond and do not open any doors or windows, I presumed. The voice came again, more insistent. Marcus, please. Something is wrong with the generator. I need you to come help me. It sounded exactly like Patricia. The same tone, the same cadence. But Patricia had been clear about the rules. She would never violate them, never call for me after dark. Marcus, can you hear me? I stayed frozen on the edge of my bed, not responding, barely breathing. The voice continued for several more minutes, sometimes pleading, sometimes frustrated. Always sounding perfectly human. Then it changed. Marcus Webb, age 23. Graduated from the University of Colorado last spring. Majored in environmental science. Your mother is named Diane. Your father left when you were 8. You had a girlfriend named Ashley who broke up with you 2 months before graduation. My blood went cold. The voice was reciting facts about my life, personal details that no one here should know. I had not shared any of that information with anyone at the station. I know everything about you, Marcus. Every fear, every regret, every secret shame. Open the window, let me in. We have so much to discuss. The voice had changed now, becoming something other than Patricia. It still had her vocal quality, but underneath was something else. Something ancient and cold and utterly inhuman. I pulled my blanket over my head like a child hiding from monsters, feeling ridiculous and terrified in equal measure. The voice continued outside my window for what felt like hours, cycling through different people. Patricia, Owen, Jack, my mother, Ashley, even my dead grandmother. Each voice was perfect, every inflection and speech pattern exactly right, but none of them were real. Eventually, blessedly, the voices stopped. I peeked out from under my blanket to see the first gray light of dawn creeping through my window. I had survived my first night at Hollow Creek Station. I dragged myself out of bed exhausted despite spending the entire night lying down. My reflection in the small mirror above my dresser showed dark circles under my eyes and a haunted expression. I splashed cold water on my face from the small sink in the corner and got dressed. The hallway was empty when I emerged, but I could hear movement from the other rooms. Everyone else was waking up, starting their day as if nothing unusual had happened. Maybe for them nothing had. I found Patricia in the mess hall already nursing a cup of coffee and staring at a tablet displaying weather data. "Rough night?" she asked without looking up. "You could say that." "Did you follow the rules?" "Yes." "Then you are already doing better than most new arrivals." She finally glanced at me, her eyes knowing. "It called to you, did it not?" I nodded, sinking into a chair across from her. "It sounded exactly like you. Then it changed, became other people. It knew things about me, personal things." "It does that," Patricia said matter-of-factly. "It gets into your head, pulls out memories, and uses them as weapons. The key is not engaging, not responding, not even acknowledging that you hear it." "What is it?" She was quiet for a long moment, debating how much to tell me. "We do not really know. Something old. Something that was here long before humans built anything in this valley. It does not like us being here, but it cannot force us out. So it tries to trick us into breaking the rules, into doing something that will kill us." "Has anyone ever opened a door for it?" 3 people in the first year the station was operational. All 3 were found dead in the snow outside their buildings. No marks on them. No signs of violence. They just stopped living. She took a sip of her coffee. "That is when Owen implemented the rules. There have been other incidents since then. People who broke different rules, but we have not lost anyone in over 10 years. And people choose to stay here, knowing that the research is valuable. The funding is excellent, and some of us find that we cannot leave, even if we wanted to." She said this last part softly, almost sadly. Owen entered the mess hall before I could ask what she meant. He poured himself coffee and joined us at the table. "Marcus survived his first night," Patricia informed him. "I heard the voices," Owen said. "Everyone in Building 3 did. You handled it correctly by not responding." "Does it happen every night?" I asked. "No, thank God. Maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes more frequently during certain times of the year. The winter solstice is particularly active, and that is coming up in 2 weeks." Jack appeared in the doorway, fully dressed in his security gear. "Owen, we have a problem. Can you come to the operations center?" We all followed Jack back to the main building, where Emma and Leonard were already gathered around a bank of monitors. The screen showed various camera feeds from around the compound, black and white images of empty walkways and dark buildings. "Watch Sector 7, Emma said, pointing to one of the screens. The camera showed the eastern sector, the area that was supposedly off limits. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a figure walked into frame. It was tall and vaguely human-shaped, but wrong somehow. Its proportions were off, its limbs too long, its movements too fluid. It glided more than walked, moving across the snow without leaving footprints. "When was this recorded?" Owen asked, his voice tight. 20 minutes ago, Emma replied. "That is live feed." We watched as the figure paused, turning to look directly at the camera. It had no face, just smooth emptiness where features should be. Then it raised one elongated arm and pointed directly at the lens. The screen went black. "Camera 7 is offline," Emma said, typing rapidly. "It is not responding to any commands." "Has it ever come that close to the compound before?" Patricia asked. "Not that I have seen," Leonard said, adjusting his glasses nervously. "It usually stays much deeper in the eastern sector." "It is getting bolder," Jack muttered. "That is not good." Owen turned to me, his expression grave. "Marcus, I need you to understand something. That thing you just saw is why we have the rules. It is why the eastern sector is off limits. It is why we do not go outside at night. That entity has been in this valley longer than human memory, and it does not want us here." "Then why do we stay?" I asked. "Because if we abandon this station, someone else will eventually come. Tourists, hikers, people who do not know the rules and cannot protect themselves. We stay to maintain a presence, to keep records, to warn others. We are the guardians, whether we like it or not." The rest of the day passed in tense routine. I helped Jack clear snow from the walkways, always working in pairs as Rule 5 dictated. The physical labor helped calm my nerves, gave me something concrete to focus on besides the thing I had seen on the monitor. Around mid-afternoon, while Jack and I were shoveling near the supply depot, I heard it. Music, faint but distinct, drifting from the direction of the forest. It was beautiful, haunting, like nothing I had ever heard before. Some kind of string instrument playing a melody that seemed to bypass my ears and go straight into my soul. I stopped shoveling, tilting my head to listen better. The music was calling to me, inviting me to find its source. "Marcus." Jack's voice was sharp. Do not listen to it. We need to go inside. Now, Rule 4. If you hear music or singing with no apparent source, leave the area calmly. Do not run. We walked back to the operations center, moving quickly but not running, though every instinct screamed at me to either flee or follow the music. Jack kept a hand on my shoulder, guiding me, keeping me focused. Once inside, the music faded, though I could still hear it faintly if I concentrated. That was close, Jack said, closing the door firmly behind us. The music is one of the most dangerous lures. It gets into your head, makes you want to follow it into the forest. Nobody who follows the music ever comes back. Why? What is making it? Same thing that calls names at night. Same thing that moves through the eastern sector. It has many tricks, many ways of trying to get us. The music is just one of them. That night I lay awake in my bed, trying not to think about the faceless figure on the camera or the haunting music. I had been at Hollow Creek Station for less than 48 hours, and already I had encountered more inexplicable phenomena than in my entire life before. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Not the heavy, ominous footsteps from outside, but normal human footsteps. Someone was moving around in Building 3 after dark, which seemed like a violation of Rule 1. I waited, listening. The footsteps stopped outside my door. Then came a soft knock. "Marcus?" Emma's voice muffled through the door. "Are you awake? I need to talk to you about something." I sat up but did not move toward the door. After hearing the voice at my window the previous night, I was not about to trust any voice calling to me after dark. "Marcus, please. This is important. It is about your family. Your mother called on the satellite phone. There has been an accident." My heart clenched. My mother was all I had left. If something had happened to her. I was halfway to the door when I stopped myself. Wait. We did not have satellite phone service at individual buildings. All communications went through the operations center. Emma would have no way to take a call in her room. And even if she had, she would not deliver such news by knocking on my door at midnight. "Marcus, I can hear you in there. Please open the door." I backed away, returning to my bed. The voice continued for several minutes, becoming more insistent, more desperate. It tried different approaches. My mother was injured and asking for me. There was a fire at my childhood home. I had inherited money from a relative. Each story more elaborate than the last. Each designed to make me open that door. Finally, it gave up. But before the voice faded completely, it said something that chilled me to my core. "I will get you eventually, Marcus Webb. Everyone breaks eventually. Everyone makes a mistake, and when you do, I will be waiting." The next morning, I found Emma in the operations center, very much alive and unaware of any midnight visit. "Someone pretended to be you last night," I told her. "Tried to get me to open my door." She nodded, unsurprised. "It did that to me too when I first arrived." Used Patricia's voice. Claimed there was a fire in the generator building. I almost fell for it. She turned back to her computers. "You are doing well, Marcus. Most people break a rule within the first week. You have made it 3 days without incident. How long before it stops trying?" "It never stops," she said simply. "You just get better at recognizing the tricks." Over the following days, I settled into a routine at Hollow Creek Station. My duties kept me busy during daylight hours, maintaining equipment, monitoring weather stations, helping Patricia and Leonard with their research. The work was mundane, reassuringly normal in contrast to the nights, but the nights were never ordinary. The entity, as Owen called it, tried different approaches. Sometimes it was subtle, a shadow moving wrong, a door I was certain I had locked standing open. Other times it was blatant, objects flying across rooms, equipment malfunctioning in impossible ways, temperatures dropping 40 degrees in seconds. I saw the faceless figure 3 more times on the security cameras, always in the eastern sector, always pointing at the lens before the camera died. Emma had stopped replacing the cameras. We had lost too many. On my 8th night, I was awakened by music again, but this time it was not coming from the forest. It was coming from inside Building 3, drifting down the hallway from somewhere deeper in the residential unit. I sat up, my heart racing. The melody was different from what I had heard before, slower, sadder, played on what sounded like a piano. But we did not have a piano in Building 3. We did not have any musical instruments at all. The music grew louder, and I could hear other sounds now. Footsteps in the hallway, multiple sets moving in rhythm to the music. Through the crack under my door, I could see shadows passing back and forth, figures moving in some kind of procession or dance. This was wrong. This was very wrong. Whatever was happening out there was not human, could not be human. But it was inside our building, inside our supposed safe zone. I did what Rule 7 told me to do. I trusted my instincts. Something felt wrong, so I stayed in my room, door locked, blanket pulled up to my chin like armor against the darkness. The music and footsteps continued for over an hour before finally fading into silence. When morning came, I found Patricia, Emma, and Leonard gathered in the hallway, all looking shaken. "Everyone heard it?" I asked. They nodded. "It has never come inside before," Leonard said, his voice trembling slightly. "Not like that. Not so present." "We need to tell Owen," Patricia said. "We found Owen in the operations center, already aware of what had happened. Apparently Jack had been monitoring the security feeds and had seen the same shadows moving through Building 3, though the cameras had been unable to capture any clear images." "It is escalating," Owen said, his face drawn and tired. "The winter solstice is in 5 days. Activity always increases around then, but this is different. Worse." "Maybe we should evacuate," Emma suggested. "Call for extraction, get everyone out until after the solstice passes." "The weather will not allow it," Jack said, pointing to a weather map on one of the monitors. "Major storm system moving in. We will be socked in for at least a week, maybe 2. No helicopters can fly in these conditions. So we are stuck here," I said. "We are stuck here," Owen confirmed. "Which means we follow the rules more carefully than ever. No exceptions, no risks, no testing boundaries. We stay inside at night, we work in pairs during the day, and we avoid the eastern sector completely." "What about the supplies?" Jack asked. "We need to do an inventory of the depot before the storm hits. Make sure we have everything we need to ride it out." Owen nodded reluctantly. "Do it this afternoon. Take Marcus with you. 2-person teams only. And stay in radio contact with the operations center at all times." After lunch, Jack and I bundled up in our heaviest parkas and made our way to the supply depot. The wind had picked up and the sky had turned an ominous gray. The storm was coming sooner than expected. The depot was a large metal building filled with shelves of food, medical supplies, fuel, and various equipment. Jack handed me a clipboard with an inventory list and we began checking off items. We had been working for about 20 minutes when I heard it. A soft thud from the back of the building, like something falling. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Jack stopped counting fuel containers and listened. "Stay here. I will check it out." "Rule 5, I reminded him. "We stay together." He nodded and we moved cautiously toward the back of the depot. The area was dimly lit, with shadows pooling between the high shelves. As we rounded the last row, we found the source of the noise. A large metal shelf had tipped forward, spilling supplies across the floor. The shelf itself was leaning at a 45-degree angle, held up only by the shelf behind it. "That should not have fallen on its own," Jack said, examining the base. "These shelves are bolted to the floor." He was right. I could see the bolts still securely fastened. The shelf had not tipped over. It had been moved, bent, twisted by something strong enough to warp metal. "We need to leave," I said, Rule 6 flashing in my mind. "If you find equipment or supplies moved from where you left them, report it immediately. Do not move them back." "Agreed," Jack said. We backed toward the exit, neither of us willing to turn our backs on the darkened rear of the depot. As we reached the door, I heard it again. Another thud, then another. More shelves were tipping one after another in sequence, like dominoes falling. We burst out into the cold afternoon air, the door slamming shut behind us. Through the small window, I could see shelves continuing to fall inside, an impossible chain reaction moving toward the front of the building. Jack grabbed his radio. "Owen, we have a situation at the supply depot. Something is inside and it is tearing the place apart. Get back to the operations center." Owen's voice crackled through the speaker. "Now! Do not engage." We ran, not bothering with the calm departure that Rule 4 suggested. This felt different, more immediate, more dangerous. Behind us, I heard a tremendous crash as something large gave way inside the depot. When we reached the operations center, Emma was already pulling up the security feed from the depot. The cameras showed the interior in chaos. Shelves lay toppled, supplies scattered everywhere, and moving through the wreckage was a figure. Not the tall, faceless thing from the eastern sector. This was different. Smaller, more solid, but no less wrong. It moved with jerky, unnatural motions like a marionette controlled by an unskilled puppeteer. "What is that?" I asked. "I do not know," Owen said. "I have never seen that before." The figure moved directly beneath a camera and looked up. Its face was a nightmare of wrong angles and too many features. Multiple eyes, multiple mouths, all shifting and rearranging like a living kaleidoscope. Emma gasped and turned away from the screen. Leonard made a strangled sound and stumbled backward. Even Owen, who had seen more than any of us, looked shaken. The figure reached up toward the camera and the feed went black. "That is the last camera in the depot," Emma said, her voice unsteady. "We are blind in there now. Seal it," Owen ordered. "Jack, get chains and padlocks. That building stays locked until after the solstice. We can survive 2 weeks on what we have stored in the mess hall." "What about the fuel for the generators?" Jack asked. "We have enough for 10 days if we are careful. After that," Owen did not finish the sentence. "We all knew what happened if the generators failed in the middle of a Montana winter. We would freeze to death long before any rescue could arrive." The storm hit that night with savage intensity. Wind howled around the buildings, driving snow so thick that visibility dropped to zero. Inside the operations center, we huddled around the fireplace, trying to conserve generator fuel while staying warm. The power flickered twice, each time causing a collective held breath until it stabilized. On the security monitors, the remaining cameras showed nothing but white static where the storm raged. We were blind now, cut off completely from the outside world. Around midnight, the music started again. But this time, it was not the haunting string melody or the sad piano. This was percussion, rhythmic and tribal, like drums beating in time with my heartbeat. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through the building's metal walls. "Everyone stay calm," Owen said, though his own voice was tight with tension. "It cannot get inside as long as we do not invite it." But even as he spoke, the temperature in the room began to drop. Our breath came out in white clouds. Frost formed on the windows, spreading in intricate patterns that looked almost like writing in some unknown language. The drums grew louder, faster, more insistent, and then came the voices, not calling individual names this time. This was a chorus. Dozens of voices speaking in unison, chanting words in a language that hurt to hear. The sounds were too sharp, too angular, composed of syllables that human throats should not be able to produce. Patricia moved closer to the fire, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Emma and Leonard huddled together, both pale with fear. Jack stood by the door, one hand on his sidearm, though we all knew bullets would do nothing against what was outside. I looked at Owen, expecting leadership, reassurance. Instead, I saw an old man who was just as frightened as the rest of us, desperately trying to hold together a situation that was spiraling out of control. The chanting reached a crescendo, then stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the noise. We waited, hearts pounding for what would come next. The lights went out. Complete darkness engulfed us except for the flickering glow of the fireplace. Emma's computer screens had gone black. The hum of the generators had ceased. Everything electronic in the building was dead. "Backup generator should kick in," Jack said into the darkness. We waited. 5 seconds, 10, 20. Nothing. "I will check the generator building," Jack said. "Rule 1, Patricia reminded him. "Nobody goes outside after dark. If we do not get power back, we will freeze to death," Jack countered. "I have to try. Wait until dawn," Owen ordered. "We can survive one night without heat. We have the fireplace, blankets. We will be uncomfortable, but we will live." Jack did not argue, though I could tell he wanted to. We settled in for a long, cold night. Patricia and Emma pushed 2 couches closer to the fireplace. Leonard disappeared briefly and returned with every blanket he could find in the building. We huddled together, sharing body heat, listening to the storm rage outside. The entity was not finished with us. Throughout the night, we heard sounds. Scratching on the walls like something with claws trying to dig through metal. Footsteps on the roof, heavy and deliberate. Voices calling to us from outside, each one perfectly mimicking someone we knew and loved. At one point, I heard my mother's voice clear as day, calling my name and begging me to help her. She sounded terrified, desperate. Every fiber of my being wanted to run outside and save her. But I knew it was not real. Could not be real. My mother was in Colorado, warm and safe, unaware of the nightmare her son was enduring in a Montana research station. Dawn came slowly, the darkness outside our windows grudgingly giving way to gray twilight. The storm had not abated, but at least we could see again. Jack was the first to move, standing stiffly from his position by the fire. "I am checking the generators," he announced. "Marcus, you are with me." We dressed in our warmest gear, preparing ourselves for the brutal cold and whatever might be waiting outside. Owen handed Jack a flare gun and gave me a handheld radio. "Stay in constant contact," Owen said. "If anything seems wrong, get back here immediately." Do not try to be heroes. Jack and I stepped out into the covered walkway. The wind screamed through the gaps in the walls, driving snow into our faces despite the overhead protection. Visibility was maybe 10 feet. Beyond that, everything was white chaos. We moved slowly toward the generator building, our boots crunching in the accumulated snow. The radio crackled with static, and I had to hold it close to my ear to hear Patricia checking in from the operations center. "Can you hear me?" her voice asked. "Barely," I replied. "The interference is bad. Just keep talking so we know you are okay." The generator building was only 100 yards from the operations center, but it felt like miles. Every shadow in the swirling snow looked like something lurking, waiting. My imagination conjured the faceless figure from the security footage, the kaleidoscope creature from the supply depot. Things even worse that we had not yet encountered. Jack unlocked the generator building and we stepped inside. The space was dominated by 2 massive diesel generators, both silent and cold. Jack moved to the first one, checking gauges and controls while I stood by the door watching both him and the storm outside. "Fuel lines are fine," Jack muttered. "Battery connections look good. Should not be any reason these would not start." He pressed the ignition button. Nothing happened. Not even a click or a sputter. The machine was completely dead. "Try the backup," I suggested. Jack moved to the second generator with the same result. Both machines, regularly maintained and tested, refused to start. It was as if they had simply decided to stop being machines. "This is not mechanical failure," Jack said, his breath fogging in the freezing air. "This is something else. Can you fix it?" "I do not know what there is to fix. Everything looks normal, but nothing works." He pulled out his radio. "Oh, and both generators are down. No obvious cause. I need Leonard to come take a look, see if he can figure out what is happening." "Negative," Owen's voice came back. "Get back to the operations center. We will figure out another solution." Jack looked at the dead generators with frustration, then nodded. We turned to leave and stopped. Standing in the doorway was a child. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, wearing a thin summer dress. Her feet were bare, her skin pale from the cold. Snow had accumulated on her shoulders and in her dark hair. She looked up at us with wide, frightened eyes. "Please help me," she said, her voice small and scared. "I am lost. I am so cold." Every instinct screamed at me to help her, to wrap this freezing child in my coat and get her to safety. But those same instincts also triggered alarm bells. A child, alone in a blizzard, hundreds of miles from any civilization, wearing summer clothes. "It was impossible. Do not move," Jack said quietly to me. "Do not speak to it." The child took a step forward, reaching out with one small hand. "Please, my parents are gone." "I do not know where I am. It is so cold." Tears streamed down her face, but they were wrong somehow. Too thick, too dark. In the dim light of the generator building, they looked almost black. "We have to go," Jack said, gripping my arm. "But she is just a child." "That is not a child," Jack cut me off. "Look at her shadow." I looked down. The girl's shadow, cast by the faint light coming through the doorway behind her, did not match her form. It was too large, too angular, with too many limbs extending in impossible directions. As I watched, the shadow moved independently, reaching toward us with clawed appendages while the girl herself remained still. "Come with me," the girl said, her voice taking on a strange echo. "Come into the cold. Come into the dark. Come with me and I will show you such wonders." Jack pulled the flare gun from his pocket and fired it directly over the girl's head. The bright red light filled the building, and for just a moment I saw what the creature really was. Not a child, but something ancient and twisted, wearing the shape of a child like an ill-fitting costume. Its true form flickered in the harsh light, all teeth and angles and hungry emptiness. The creature shrieked, a sound that was nothing like a child's cry. It retreated from the doorway, vanishing into the swirling snow. Jack and I did not wait. We ran, sprinting through the covered walkway back toward the operations center. Behind us, I could hear footsteps following. Not running, but walking with that same measured, purposeful pace I had heard circling buildings at night. The thing was not giving up. It was hunting. We burst through the operations center door and Jack slammed it shut behind us, throwing the bolt. Everyone else was gathered in the main room, still huddled near the now dying fireplace. The temperature inside had dropped significantly. Without power, we were slowly freezing. Did you see it? Emma asked. On your way back, did you see something? It pretended to be a child, I said, still catching my breath. Tried to get us to help it. The generators? Owen asked. Dead, Jack replied. Both of them. No mechanical reason. They just will not start. Owen's face was grim. Then we need to make a decision. We can stay here and hope the storm breaks before we freeze. Or we can try to make it to the Southern Ranger Station. It is about 8 miles through the forest. In this storm? Patricia said. That is suicide. We would never make it. Staying here is also suicide, Leonard pointed out. Just slower. There is a third option, Emma said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. The eastern sector? Absolutely not, Owen said immediately. Rule 3 exists for a reason. So do rules about not going outside after dark, but we just sent Jack and Marcus out there, Emma argued. The rules are breaking down, Owen. Whatever is happening, whatever this thing is, it is not following the old patterns anymore. It is escalating. What is in the eastern sector? I asked. Owen was silent for a long moment, then sighed heavily. The original structure. Before we built this research station, there was something else here. A facility constructed in the 1950s for classified government research. When that program was shut down, the buildings were abandoned. We were told never to enter them. Why? Because the research conducted there was unnatural. They were studying the entity, trying to understand it, control it. The experiments made things worse. Much worse. People died. The program was terminated and the site was sealed. The eastern sector was built on top of those ruins. But if they were studying the entity, Emma pressed, maybe they learned something useful. Maybe there is information there that can help us. Or maybe there are things in those ruins that will kill us faster than the cold, Patricia said. We argued for another hour as the temperature continued to drop. Emma's computer equipment had been battery-powered, and she used the last of the charge to check weather updates. The storm was not expected to break for at least 4 more days. We did not have 4 days. Finally, Owen made a decision. Jack, Marcus, and I will go to the eastern sector. Emma, Patricia, and Leonard stay here. Conserve body heat, burn whatever you can for fire. If we are not back in 4 hours, try for the ranger station at first light. I am coming with you, Emma said. No, my equipment might still have enough battery to document whatever we find, and you might need someone who understands computer systems if there is any old tech still operational. She did not wait for permission, already gathering her gear. The 4 of us prepared to venture into the forbidden area. Jack distributed the remaining flares and made sure we each had a radio, though the storm was creating so much interference that communication was spotty at best. Owen pulled out an old map of the original facility, the paper yellowed and brittle with age. The main research building should be here, he said, pointing to a spot about half a mile into the eastern sector. If there is anything useful, it will be there. We stepped out into the storm, leaving Patricia and Leonard to maintain the fire in the operations center. The wind was even worse than before, and the snow was so thick I could barely see Jack walking directly in front of me. We roped ourselves together with climbing cord, so we would not lose each other in the whiteout conditions. The walk to the eastern sector boundary took 20 minutes of brutal struggle against the elements. A line of posts marked the edge of the restricted area, each one painted with faded warnings. We crossed the threshold and immediately something felt different. The wind did not stop, but it changed direction, no longer pushing against us but swirling around us in patterns that defied normal meteorology. The temperature, already well below zero, seemed to drop even further. But most disturbing was the sound. Underneath the howl of the wind, I could hear whispers. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all speaking at once in that same painful language we had heard during the night. The words scraped against my consciousness, and I had to fight the urge to cover my ears. Do not listen, Owen shouted over the storm. Keep moving. We pushed forward, following Owen's map as best we could. The landscape here was different from the rest of the station. Strange formations rose from the snow, structures that were neither natural nor man-made, but something in between. I caught glimpses of them through breaks in the snow. twisted metal and stone fused together in configurations that hurt to look at. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 15 minutes, a building emerged from the storm. It was low and bunker-like, half buried in snow and earth. The entrance was a heavy metal door, partially open, revealing only darkness beyond. "That is it," Owen said. "The main research facility." We approached cautiously. The whispers grew louder here, more insistent. I could feel them trying to get inside my head, trying to show me things, memories that were not mine, possibilities that should not exist. Jack went through the door first, flare gun ready. Emma followed, then me, with Owen bringing up the rear. Inside, we found ourselves in a concrete corridor lit only by our flashlights. The walls were covered in frost, and our breath came out in thick clouds. The corridor led deeper into the facility, branching off into various rooms and passages. Signs on the walls indicated different departments: paranormal research, dimensional studies, entity containment. We chose the path marked Central Operations. The deeper we went, the stranger things became. The frost on the walls formed patterns that looked almost like faces or figures frozen mid-scream. The temperature fluctuated wildly, going from Arctic cold to nearly comfortable and back again within seconds. And the whispers never stopped, always present, always trying to communicate something just beyond understanding. We found the Central Operations Room at the heart of the facility. It was a large space dominated by ancient computer equipment from the 1950s. Massive machines with vacuum tubes and punch card readers. But mixed in with the old technology were things that did not belong to any era. Devices that seemed to predate human civilization entirely. "Look at this," Emma said, moving to a bank of filing cabinets along one wall. She pulled open a drawer and removed a folder marked Entity Classification and Containment Procedures. We gathered around as she opened the file. Inside were documents, photos, and diagrams. The photos showed the entity in various forms, sometimes humanoid, sometimes animal, sometimes nothing recognizable at all. The documents described attempts to communicate with it, to understand its nature and origin. "According to this," Emma read, "the entity is not from our world. It exists partially in our dimension and partially in something else. The researchers believed it was drawn here by something called a threshold point, a place where the barrier between dimensions is thin." "This valley," Owen said. "This whole valley is a threshold point." "It gets worse," Emma continued. "They tried to close the threshold to push the entity back to wherever it came from. But their methods failed. Instead of closing the doorway, they made it wider. They gave the entity more access to our world." "How do we close it?" Jack asked. Emma flipped through more pages. "They had a theoretical solution, but they never implemented it. It required a sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" I asked, though I was not sure I wanted to know the answer. "A willing human consciousness. Someone who would cross through the threshold into the entity's dimension and essentially become part of the barrier. A living seal between worlds. The person would cease to exist in any meaningful way, but their presence would stabilize the threshold." We stood in horrified silence, the implications sinking in. The researchers had understood what needed to be done, but no one had been willing to pay the price. So they had abandoned the facility, sealed it, and left the problem for future generations. "There has to be another way," I said. "If there is, it is not in these files," Emma replied. A sound from the corridor made us all freeze. Footsteps, multiple sets, approaching from the way we had come. But these were not human footsteps. They had a strange clicking quality, like claws on concrete. "We need to leave," Owen said. "Now." We moved quickly back down the corridor, but the footsteps were faster. Whatever was in here with us was between us and the exit. Jack raised his flare gun as shapes emerged from the darkness ahead. They were the things from the photos, the entity's many forms made manifest. Tall figures with too many limbs, small scuttling creatures with too many eyes, writhing masses that defied description, all of them converging on our position. "Back," Jack shouted, firing a flare down the corridor. The creatures recoiled from the bright light, shrieking in that same inhuman language. We ran deeper into the facility, taking turns at random, just trying to put distance between us and the things pursuing us. We burst into another large room, this one different from the others. In the center was a circular platform made of that same fused metal and stone I had seen outside. Strange symbols were carved into its surface, glowing with a faint, sickly light. Above the platform, the air itself seemed wrong. shimmering and distorted like heat waves, but the room was freezing. The threshold, Emma breathed. This is where the dimensions intersect. The creatures had stopped at the doorway, not entering the room, but blocking our escape. They stood there, watching, waiting, and I realized they were not trying to kill us. They were hurting us, driving us toward the threshold. It wants one of us to go through, I said. It wants someone to make the sacrifice. Then it is going to be disappointed, Jack said. We will find another way out. But even as he spoke, I felt the pull. The threshold was calling to me, showing me things. I could see through it, catch glimpses of the entity's world. It was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. A place of impossible geometries and colors that did not exist in our spectrum. And I could feel the entity itself, ancient and lonely, trapped between worlds just as much as we were. It had not chosen to be here. The threshold had drawn it in, catching it like a fly in amber. For millennia, it had been reaching into our world, trying to communicate, trying to find a way home. But it was alien, incomprehensible, and its attempts at contact came across as horror and madness to human minds. The rules had not been about protecting us from a malevolent entity. They had been about managing an impossible situation, maintaining a fragile balance between two worlds that should never have touched. I understand now, I said quietly. Marcus? Owen looked at me with concern. What do you understand? Why it is escalating. The threshold is becoming unstable. Climate change, seismic activity, even our presence here. Everything is making it worse. The entity is not trying to hurt us. It is trying to get our attention, trying to make us understand that something needs to be done before the threshold collapses completely. And if it collapses? Emma asked. I did not need to answer. I could see it in the visions the threshold was showing me. If the barrier failed completely, the entity's entire dimension would come pouring into ours. Not just one creature, but countless others like it. Beings that operated on completely different physical laws, whose very presence would warp reality around them. Our world would be transformed, made uninhabitable for human life. Someone has to go through, I said. No, Owen said firmly. We will find another way. There is no other way. You read the files. This is the only solution. Then I will do it, Owen said. I am old. I have lived my life. You are 23 years old, Marcus. You have decades ahead of you. But I am the one who can feel the threshold. I am the one it is calling to. I stepped closer to the platform. I have been sensing it since I arrived. The voices at my window, the music in the forest. It was not trying to hurt me. It was trying to prepare me. Marcus, please, Emma said. We just met you. We do not even really know you. You cannot sacrifice yourself for us. I am not doing it for you, I said. I am doing it for everyone. My mother, my friends back home. Every person on Earth who has no idea how close they are to annihilation. I climbed onto the platform before anyone could stop me. The symbols beneath my feet glowed brighter, and the shimmering air above began to swirl, forming a vortex. I could feel the pull intensifying, the threshold opening wide to receive me. If you do this, Jack said, his voice thick with emotion, will you still exist? In any form? I do not know, I admitted. But I think I will become part of something larger. Part of the barrier, part of the balance. It will not be life as I know it, but it will not be death either. Owen stepped closer to the platform. You are brave, Marcus Webb. Braver than anyone I have ever known. Tell my mother. I started, then stopped. What could I tell her? How could I explain this? Tell her I made a choice that mattered. Tell her I helped people. The vortex was fully formed now, a swirling portal into impossible elsewhere. The creatures at the doorway had stopped their shrieking. They were watching, waiting to see if I would actually do it. I took a deep breath and looked at my companions one last time. Owen with his weathered face and sad eyes, Emma with her tech equipment and fierce intelligence, Jack with his soldier's bearing and unexpected gentleness. Then I looked at the threshold, at the space between worlds where something ancient and tired waited for relief. I stepped forward into the vortex. The sensation was beyond description. I was simultaneously being torn apart and being more whole than I had ever been. I could feel myself stretching across dimensions, becoming a bridge between worlds. My consciousness expanded, touching the entity that had haunted Hollow Creek Station for so long. It was not a monster. It was a refugee, caught in a place it did not belong, desperate to return home but unable to cross the barrier. And now I was becoming that barrier, giving it a way through while also keeping the two worlds separated. I felt my physical form dissolving, but my awareness remained. I was no longer Marcus Webb, 23-year-old environmental science graduate. I was something new, something that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. I could see the research station from angles that should not exist. Could hear conversations happening in both the past and future. Could feel the presence of every living thing in the valley. The entity passed through me, and I felt its gratitude, its relief at finally going home. As it left our dimension, the threshold stabilized. I was the seal now, the living barrier that would keep the world separate. From my new perspective, I watched Jack, Emma, and Owen stumble out of the research facility and back into the storm. I watched them return to the operations center where Patricia and Leonard waited anxiously. I watched as the generator suddenly roared to life, powered not by diesel fuel but by the stabilized energy of the threshold itself. The storm began to clear. The creatures that had plagued the station for decades faded away, no longer able to manifest in our world. The rules that had governed life at Hollow Creek were now unnecessary. The danger had passed, but I could also see beyond the station. I could feel other threshold points scattered across the world, other places where dimensions touched. Most were stable, but some were not. And in my new form, I could sense them all, monitor them, maintain them. This was my purpose now, not the life I had planned, not the career in environmental science or the family I might have raised, but a different kind of existence, protecting a world that would never know I was there. Sometimes on clear nights, I watched my former colleagues through my expanded perception. Patricia completed her atmospheric research and published findings that revolutionized climate science. Emma developed new communication protocols that improved safety at remote research stations worldwide. Leonard made discoveries about seismic patterns that saved countless lives. Jack trained new security personnel, passing on the wisdom he had gained. Owen retired but visited the station every summer, walking the trails and remembering the young man who had given up everything to save them. And sometimes, very rarely, I sent them dreams. Good dreams of gratitude and peace, so they would know that wherever I was, whatever I had become, I did not regret my choice. My mother received a letter, ostensibly from Owen, explaining that I had died in an accident at the station. She grieved, as mothers do, but she also spoke proudly of her son, who had worked at an important research facility, who had died doing something meaningful. It was not the whole truth, but it was enough. Years passed. Decades. The people I had known grew old and died, their consciousnesses passing through me as they left this world for whatever came next. New researchers came to Hollow Creek Station unaware of its history, conducting their studies in peace. The valley remained beautiful and dangerous in the ways that wild places are, but no longer touched by things beyond human understanding. I remained, patient, eternal, watching, waiting. And on winter nights, when the aurora danced in the Montana sky, I sometimes wondered if this was what it meant to be truly alive. Not the brief, fragile existence I had known as Marcus Webb, but this vast, timeless awareness that stretched between worlds. I had become part of something greater than myself. I had become the guardian of the threshold, the keeper of the balance, the barrier between dimensions. I had become the rule that kept everyone safe, and I would continue, forever, because some sacrifices are not endings, they are transformations.